Long ago and far away grew a humble green plant we have a name for today. Solanum tuberosum, in Latin its name, but you and me know it as smash, mash, cheap on the cash. High up in the Andes, in Bolivia and Peru, this fair weather creature just grew and grew. Papa, it was often called by children when at play.
Oh, chuno, I'm freeze-dried, mucho vitamin C, hi hey.
Sorry about that, everybody. Then later, in the 1500s or so, the Spanish conquistadors started to row over to a land called South America. And guess what they found in the deadly nightshade family way? Yes, you've guessed it. Potato! How I love you so. Potato! You mean so much to me. Potato! No, you're not just a lump. No, well, you're full of starchy stuff. Afeard of eating it. Purple and raw. It took many years to get its real flaw, but once it caught on, no, it really couldn't be stopped. And everyone ended up liking it an awful lot. Potato! How I love you so. Potato! Oh, you mean so much to me. Potato! I'll surely never give you up. Your chips are always on my lips and hips. There's more. Now, as for the origins of the humble chip, well, you know, the thing that's golden brown and comes with a dip. Pommes, Pont Neuf, Le Chip was on sale in the boulevards of Paris a century ago. Then our story goes to Saratoga Springs, US of A, where a man kept sending back his French fries, complaining them too thick. So the exasperated chef called Crumb took leave of all his senses and chopped 'em really thin and fried 'em and gave birth to the English crisp and the American chip. There's more. The name for potato originally came from patata. Now this was a Haitian name. And the enemy of tubers definitely came in the form of Phytophthora infestan, late potato blight fame. Resistant to frost up to 8 degrees. I'm a short daylight plant. 12 hours suit me. My flowers are white, magenta and purple. Just bung me in the oven and you'll be able to hurdle. Well, with the energy, see? Now I will leave you this fine day with an anchor prayer to the humble pretty. O Creator, you who give life to all things and made man that he may live and multiply, multiply also the fruits of the earth, the potatoes and other foods, that man may not suffer from hunger and misery. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for this wonder food, the potato. The potato is the star. Thank you very much. Finn.
There once lived a beautiful young girl named Isobel. She had locks of auburn hair, skin like the moonlight, and her eyes twinkled like the morning dew. She lived in the middle of a forest, the only daughter of a thatcher and his wife. Her life was full of happiness and laughter. One morning, while Isobel was walking in the forest, gathering wild flowers, she came across a young woodcutter, resting under a tree. And as she walked close to him and their eyes met, they recognised instantly that they had found their true love. His name was Aaron. He had dark curly hair falling thick around his face. He was tall and strong with a noble bearing. In the months that followed, their love blossomed and they grew inseparable, and they planned to marry in the spring. So autumn drew in, and the leaves fell from the trees. A great sadness covered the land. A terrible war had started, and young Aaron was called to fight for his country. He held Isobel in his arms, and he promised her that he would return safe, and they would marry and have many children. She fought back her tears, and she kissed him, and in the next breath, he was gone. She waited, and she waited, and she waited again. Every morning she woke in hope that he'd return, but he never did. Every night she listened for his footsteps. In her dreams she heard his voice, and when she woke, he wasn't there. Long years passed, and Isobel's beauty began to wither and fade. She worried that when Aaron returned, she wouldn't be as he remembered her. But she had heard tales of a wise gypsy, and that this gypsy knew the secret of life, and that she lived deep in the forest by a brook. Isobel set out to find her. She ventured deep into the most dense part of the forest, and the further she walked, the more old and twisted the trees became. Then she saw a path she had never seen before, and heard the sound of running water. So she followed the path, and after a short time, there was the gypsy beside the brook, picking herbs. "Hello, Isobel. I know why you've come." "Well, how is that possible?" Isobel said. "If you listen to the whisper of the trees, much is revealed. The secret of eternal youth lies in a black rose. You must pluck and eat one petal of the black rose every night at midnight. But first you must find it. There is only one black rose. But be warned, Isobel, eternal youth does not necessarily bring happiness, nor is it the cure for longing and sorrow. But if this is your wish, you shall find it." Isobel found the black rose. From then on, every night at midnight she plucked and ate one petal of the black rose, longing for her beloved's return. Seasons changed from spring to summer, summer to autumn, autumn to winter. The forest became colder and darker. Isobel's parents grew old and died, but still she plucked and ate one petal of the black rose, looking young and beautiful. One night, while Isobel was in the forest, she came across an old man sitting under an oak tree, crying quietly into his hands. She drew closer, she bent down, she asked him why he was crying. And without looking up, he told Isobel his story. He was blinded during a terrible war, and he had lost his love and had been searching for her ever since. And he had never found her, and now he was old and tired. Isobel reached out to him, and as she did, he turned his face. "Aaron? Isobel?" Although he was old and tired, and she was young and beautiful, she loved him just the same, and he loved her. But she started to cry, and as she cried, the tears she cried were black tears. They splashed onto Aaron's face and eyes and into his mouth, and there, in the blink of an eye, sat Aaron, young and handsome. He scooped Isobel into his strong arms, and he kissed her. They married the very next spring, as they'd always planned, and in her hand, Isobel held a single black rose.
Well, this is a cautionary tale about something that used to be given to school children every day. Okay. Once upon a time there was a boy called Pablo, and they lived far, far away from here, actually in a place that was very similar to the humid tropics where all the palm trees are. Now Pablo, he was a sweet little boy, but he was also naughty, healthily naughty, and he was bored one day and he thought, I know, I'm going to play a trick on my parents. Oh, I know what I could do. I could make them something really strange to eat. Okay, so this is what he decided to do. He went to the larder. Oh no, he thought, nothing in there, never mind. So he decided to go out into the garden and see what he could find there. Well, when he got out into the garden, he sat down on the ground, and he saw lying on there a palm tree that his father had chopped down. Now Pablo had picked a stick up on his little walk around the garden, and before he knew it, as you do, he was whacking the palm tree. Whack, 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 whack. And he chopped it into little bits. So there it was, in little bits. And then he looked around and he saw a pail of water. So, as you do when you're a little boy, he took the pail of water and chucked it all over the chopped up bits of palm tree. And then a bit of music came into his head, and he decided to do a bit of a dance, And he danced all the way up and down the palm tree, and back and down again, until it was a mush, rather like a wallpapery gooey stuff. Ding! He thought. I know, I will boil this up and make something really nice to eat for my parents. Aha! So, this is what he decided to do. He ran in and he got a saucepan. He got a sieve, you know what a sieve is, with the holes, and he put the sieve over the pan and he scooped up all of the pulp and put it through the sieve and pushed it down into the pan, and it dropped down like goo. Rather like wallpapery, pasty, gooey stuff. Eek, he thought, ideal. So he takes the pan, by now full of this goo, and puts it on the stove in the kitchen. Ding! He waits for a long time, stirring occasionally. Time passes. Ding! He lays the table for tea. 1 spoon, 2 spoon, 3 spoon, 1 bowl, 2 bowl, 3 bowls, and then he calls to his parents, Mommy, Daddy, I have cooked something really nice for you. Please come and eat it. So they come in and they sit down. He spoons out the goo. 1 spoonful, 2 spoonful, 3 spoonful, all full. Oh no, he thinks. This looks really horrible, these bowls of gooey, pasty stuff. And then, as if by magic, he remembers, in the empty larder, there was, in the corner, hidden, a pot of strawberry jam. So, he goes to the larder, he pulls it down and puts it on the table. He takes a great big spoon and dips it into the jam, and puts a great big blob into every single bowl of the wallpapery pasty goo. 1 spoonful, 1 spoonful, 1 spoonful, 3, done. Okay, Mommy, Daddy, come to sit down. Oh, Pablo, this is looking fantastic. And so they begin to eat. And he is a little bit nervous because he knows that he has made something very strange, and he is not sure at all whether they will tell him off or even like it. So they all begin to eat the first spoonful. No one makes a sound. 2nd spoonful. Still nothing. Oh, thinks Pablo, this is very strange but kind of good too, huh? 3rd spoonful. Then he hears the noise. Oh, Pablo, this is the most fantastic food. What on earth is it? It is so delicious that I have finished my bowl immediately, say his parents. Oh, well, Pablo, he was a bit shocked because he did not expect them to like it so much. He said, well, to tell you the truth, it was a bit of a trick, really, but, it ended up being really good. It was a palm tree that was in the garden, and I kind of chopped it up a bit, and I danced all over it, and I threw water over it, and I put it all through the sieve, and then I put it on the cooker, and I stirred it for a long time, and time passed, and then I was here, and then I looked in the bowls, and it was boring. Then I put some strawberry jam on it from the pot, because that was the only thing in the larder, and they were all very happy. At that moment, at that exact moment in time, there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Oh, a knock at the door, said Pablo. I'll go and get it. He runs to the door, opens it. And at the door stood a man. Hello, I'm a schoolteacher from England. Oh, hello, schoolteacher from England. Well, hello. Look, I'm a bit lost and I'm a bit hungry, actually, and I wondered if you had any food you could lend me. Well, said Pablo, in fact, you've picked a very good time to get lost and feel hungry, for I have some food right here. So he brings in the teacher into the house and sits him at the table, and he gets a spoon and a bowl, and he takes 2 great big scoops of the wallpapery gooey stuff, and then puts a jam on the top, and then the school teacher begins to eat. Pablo, gosh, I can't believe you made such a delicious meal as this. Please tell me what it was. So Pablo continues to tell him what he told his parents about finding the palm tree in the garden and what he did to it. The school teacher from England then says, this is the kind of food we need in our school back in England for our little children to eat. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, this was a long time ago when your mums and dads were very young and went to school themselves. Yes, said the school teacher from England. I'm going to take this back to England, and I will get the recipe of you, and we will have it in our school dinners. And you know what, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that is exactly what the school teacher from England did. And do you know what? We have been suffering from it ever since. Sago pudding. No more.
There was once 2 boys who lived in my village, and they was called Peter and Paul. Now these 2 boys was like chalk and cheese. Peter was a big head. I gave him a cup of coffee one day. I said, let that cup cool down. He picked up the cup and he took a great big sip, and he burnt his mouth so badly he couldn't taste nothing for a whole month. Now Paul was the exact opposite. He was lovely. If his mother was ill, he'd go down the shop, he'd make you a cup of tea. But these 2 boys had a problem. They had fallen in love with the same girl. And she wasn't any old girl. She was a princess. And she had beautiful purple hair that stood on end like she'd been electrocuted and fell all the way down to her feet. And every night at midnight, the 2 boys would creep up the hill to the castle. They'd find the princess's bedroom window and stand beneath it. Their little chests would come out, and there they'd start to sing. They couldn't sing, mind you. But this night the king was round the castle grounds, checking there was no one about. When he heard this commotion, he came round the corner and saw these 2 boys singing underneath his daughter's window. He walked up behind them and grabbed them by the scruff of their necks and started to shout, "What on earth do you think you're doing, standing underneath my daughter's window?" And the 2 boys started to panic. "We didn't mean any harm, sir. We was just trying to sing her to sleep." The king was furious. He said, "You get back here tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. You're going in my snake pit." The boys started to panic. The king had a snake pit full of the poisonous snakes of the world. They knew they were going to die. With that, the king threw him down the hill. Well, the boys started to cry, and Peter, being Peter, decided to go to the pub, and he got so drunk he didn't know who he was. Now Paul, being a bit more level-headed, he decided to go and visit his most favourite place for one last time. Now Paul loved this garden. It had the plants and flowers from all over the world. And as he walked around, he started to look at the flowers and the trees and smell smells. And he started to cry. Now the gardener was looking at him over the other side of the garden and was thinking, well, whatever's wrong with Paul? He's usually a happy fellow. And he walked up and he said, whatever's wrong, boy? And Paul said, I've been caught by the king singing to his daughter underneath her window. We'll be thrown in his snake pit tomorrow at 8 o'clock and I shall surely die. Well, the gardener started laughing so hard he fell flat on his back and held his stomach and stayed there for 20 minutes and the more. The longer he stayed there, the wilder Paul got. I thought you was my friend, he said. I'm going to die tomorrow in a snake pit and all you can do is laugh. Now the gardener got up. He held his stomach and he said, I'm ever so sorry, boy, he said. I got a secret to tell you. You see my lemon trees? Paul said, yeah. Well, I did hear a little rumour that they lemons is a cure for all poisons. Well, the tears jumped off Paul's face and he picked every lemon off all the gardener's trees and he ate every single one, whole skin and everything. Well, he went to bed and his stomach was gurgling and his mind was racing. And at 8 o'clock the next day, the two boys stood before this snake pit and they could see the snakes writhing and wriggling below them. The king walked out the castle. He didn't even look the boys in the eye. And he kicked them so hard up the backside that they flew through the air. Ah! Right into the bottom of the pit. The snakes was jumping 40 metres in the air and back down into the pit to bite the boys. They were starving. They hadn't been fed in 2 weeks. Well, the king's men came out the castle and they pulled Peter out, kicking the snakes off. And they laid him on the floor and they pronounced him dead. Well, they came to pull Paul out and he practically jumped onto his feet and started brushing himself off. And the king's eyes came out on stalks. Well, he looked up to the heavens and he said, that must be a sign of forgiveness if I've ever seen one. He walked up to Paul and he said, Paul, I've made a terrible mistake. I'd be highly honoured if tomorrow morning you'd marry my princess of a daughter. And Paul said, all right then. And the very next day, Paul married that princess. He survived a pit of poisonous snakes and he married a princess, all because of the lovely lemon.
Oh, I love olives and they love me. I grow them all on this land you see. I grow them green and I grow them black. I pick them all and put them in my sack. Then I take them and put them in between 2 stones and squeegee them. Then what happens, I think you know, is all my glorious olive oil. La 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 la, my olive oil. I love eating them whole and neat. Getting the stones can be quite some feat. I find the tapenade quite sublime. You really should try it for yourself sometime. You think I'm crazy, you think I'm mad, but this olive oil, it don't taste half bad. In fact, it's yummy and good for you, with lots of antioxidants into la 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 la, my olive oil. There are 4 oils that come out. The first is flowers that I shout about. Extra virgin is second best. He's green and quite a cut above the rest. Then comes Virgin, please say no more. They all come knocking for it at my door. Then comes Olive, the last one out. Is what this song is really all about. La 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 la, my oily boil, la la.
There was once a man who worked in this pit, and he was known as Gentle John. Now most days he would have been found up beyond the slopes of this pit, and he would be there chopping down the trees for the clay-dry fires. Whilst he was up there, he would pick the yellow flowers from the gorse bush and put them into a sack he'd carry on his side. Now I'm going to let you into a little secret. John would take home these yellow flowers and he would make homemade gorse wine, and it was handsome. And John believed passionately in the medicinal properties of this wine. And if anyone was ill, he'd be at their doorstep with a bottle of his gorse wine, regardless if he knew him or not. And that's where he came to get his name, Gentle John. Now if you were to go up beyond the slopes of this pit, to visit this 7-foot-tall man with jet black hair, the kind of black hair that when the sun hit it, electric blue sparks would jump out, and he had the brightest blue eyes, as open as the gates to heaven they were. You would have seen why the local cobbler had to use a whole cow's hide just to make one of his work boots. Now, before cutting any tree, John would stand before it, and he would bow as a sign of respect to that tree. He would take up his axe and he'd chop those trees down as easy as cutting a bit of butter for me or you. And he would carry them 2 at a time in each arm down over the slope of the pit into the middle. And there he'd start to split them up for the fires. By 12 midday, that man had the fire lit in the clay-dry room. Charlie would be one end, John the other, and the race would be on to get the clay cut up. Now these rooms were so hot you could hardly breathe, and the men's bodies would glisten and sparkle all over like the stars in the night sky. But this day that I'm telling you about, Charlie said there was something funny in the air. Everything that happened in that room happened in slow motion, and when Charlie turned to shout to John, he was too late. John! John had already tripped over the bucket and fallen into the red-hot clay and frozen there with the shock and the heat and the pain. By the time 7 men had come into the room and dragged John out of the clay, he'd passed out on the floor, and the blisters were forming all over his body, up his arms, on his chest, even on his face. By the time they got him down the local hospital, he was waking up from his daze, and the pain hit him there and then like a thunderbolt. And this nurse stood him up and looked him up and down, and she said, "We'll have to cut these blisters off." And she picked up a pair of scissors, and she cut every blister off that man's body. And he stood there. He didn't murmur. He didn't complain. He didn't even blink an eyelid. All he asked for was a bottle of his gorse wine, and for 6 months he drank a whole bottle a day. And within 6 months he was back in this pit working, with not a single scar on his entire body, insisting it was down to his gorse wine, of course. Well, that was the last we ever saw of John. But some days I'll sit up on those slopes, and every now and again you'll see they bushes moving and shifting. And some days you'll hear this tune in the air. And John had this song he would sing while he picked these yellow flowers. And it went something like this. Go cut furs, flames on the fuzzy bush. Go cut furs, fill up the clone. Go cut furs, flames on the fuzzy bush. Kissing's out of fashion when the fur's out of bloom. Oh, its black breaks a thorn, and its gold bursts a blossom, and it's not long now till dawn, so we'll carry her all the way home. And do you know what? If I hear that song, or I see those bushes moving, I get a feeling in my heart I can't even begin to describe to you, 'cause I know 'tis the ghost of my John.
It's so hot. The heat is seeping through. I can feel it eating every inch of my flesh, all the way into my bones. The sweat is endless. Apparently, a good bit of sweating is a sure sign of good health. Well, the sky is bright but moonless, so I call to the sun. Now I see it, hide and seeking, peeping through patches of creamy clouds, slowly creeping in the south. Ah, it must be midday. It's getting hotter. I think I am burning. This flame is turning, churning. Now it's frowning, clowning, waving, misbehaving. It makes me jump. What a violent character. Silent partner. Sometimes I quite like a gentle glowing fire. It helps me meditate, relax me, offers me a place I may escape. I even enjoy the feeling, my pores steaming, the radiation frying my skin. A bit like an overcooked suntan in the Bahamas. You know the sort I mean, the sort of heat you cannot defeat, the sort that England never repeats. So just go with the flow, find a glow in your heart, for winter is fast approaching. Fight it. Don't let the body slow down. I don't want to see that frown on your face. That's it. Smile. Light the fire. Let it be warm again before I retire. I must burn. I will learn the passion. I want to feel hot. I want to hear lost voices. I want to see red, yellow, and blue dancers. I want to smell the fumes of death. I want to taste the kiss of life. And I want to know your fire.
Oh, you can't push your granny off a bus. No, you can't push your granny off a bus. No, you can't push your granny, 'cause she's your mammy's mammy. You can't push your granny off a bus. Singing aye, aye, yippee, yippee, aye, all together. Singing aye, aye, yippee, yippee, aye. Singing aye, aye, yippee, aye, aye, yippee, aye, aye, yippee, yippee, aye. Aye. Aye, aye. I know a story about a great granny. She doesn't live too far from here, but she lives far away from her family. You see, they don't know how to take care of her, 'cause she's nae very well. She's a wee bit deaf, she canna breathe too good, and she's got sores on her body. And she's old. She's so old, she saw the first car, the first TV, the first space rocket, the first computer. Well, it was the time of year for the family pilgrimage to go and visit Granny. Well, to be quite honest, her teenage grandchildren, Sam and Fiona, weren't exactly over the moon about going to see her. But Granny, she was so excited. She had her hair done, put on her best cardie, and placed her favourite, most delicately embroidered hanky up her left sleeve. And as the festive ritual of giving Granny her Newbury fruits took place, and she delicately opened up the box, she leant close. "Would you like a story with your sweetie?" And just as the sugary fruit delights began to melt in their mouths, she began her tale. "A long, long time ago, there was a great big bang! And a family of brothers and sisters were born. Now the biggest brother was a great big ball of fire. Goodness gracious. And he had two sisters who were very close. Now the biggest sister, she was beautiful. She wore a veil, and the colours underneath of blue and green and yellow and orange and purple and all the colours you can imagine shone out. Well, her little sister was very jealous, 'cause she was cold and dull and grey. Now they used to speak to each other, and the bigger sister told stories of her playing with these amazing people, four-leggeds and winged ones and swimmers and creepy crawlers and two-leggeds. Well, the little sister was very lonely, until one day a ship flew through the air from the big sister towards the little sister, and when it landed, two men came out and bounded across her body. She was so happy, she didn't mind when they stuck a pin in her side. Well, the years went by and a few more folk came to visit her, and she forgot her jealousy and her loneliness. But she noticed that her sister was becoming deaf. In fact, she wasn't looking very well at all. Sores were appearing on her body, and there was a huge hole in her veil. "I must do something to help my sister. I'll ask my brother, he'll know." "Someone, somewhere, will know how to care for our sister. Ask the big blackness." And so she did. With all her heart, she called to the big blackness, "Someone, somewhere, come and care for my sister. She's nae well." "What happened next?" said Sam and Fiona. "You can't finish the story there." "Oh, I'm old, but that's as far as the story goes that I know. It's meant the earth to me today that you came to visit. I love you so much, and maybe one day you'll tell this tale to your grandchildren. I hope it's got a happy ending."
The story I'm about to tell you has actually happened. So this one is very, very, very special. And it's special to me as well because it's a story about one of my good friends. The good friend of mine is called Dave. Now Dave, he went to live in Australia about 3 years ago. But about 2 years ago, he went to Mexico to buy cacti because he loves cacti. He thinks that they are the best plants in the world. And he went on the plane and he flew out to Mexico. So he gets to Mexico. He goes into one shop. He sees this one cacti. And this one cacti is $500. $500, that's nearly 300 pounds for one cacti. It's a lot of money. So he thinks, I'll buy it. Silly man. He should have come to me, you see. I could have gone into the biome there and dug one up. The green team, you know, there are so many plants in there. They would never notice if I took just one. Anyway, he gets the cacti and he takes it home. Now, it's 18 hours on the plane with this one cacti. What I did not tell you, however, is this one cacti is 1.5 meters tall. So you can imagine that he has some funny looks on the plane. Because most people, you know, maybe go on holiday with a husband or a wife. But for 18 hours, there's a 1.5 meter cacti sat beside him. He gets off the plane now when he lands. And he walks through customs. He thinks, no problem. It's only a cacti. Stop! 3 months in quarantine, he has to wait for the cacti to come out. And another $500. $500 combined all together. My word, that's $800. That's almost 500 pounds for one cacti. But anyway, as I said before, he's a silly man and he pays the money. He gets the cacti and he takes it home and plants it in his garden and he thinks, okay, maybe now I can forget about it. But 1 year later, the cacti was 2.5 meters tall. It was a big garden as the cacti stood at the bottom. One day he was outside, he was watering the whole of his garden. He comes along with his hosepipe up to the cacti and sprays the cacti with water. Now, the whole cacti begins to shake. Just a little. But Dave is certain of one thing, and he thinks that this cacti should not be shaking. It should not shake at all. Maybe he thinks when he went out the night before with his good friends to some parties, maybe he had one or too many, how can I say, lemonades. No, could not have been that. Maybe the water is just too cold. No, it's not that at all. Maybe I'm just mad. Yes, that's it, he says. He's mad. So he turns around, puts the hosepipe back in his hand and sprays the cacti. But this time, the cacti shakes even more. Now Dave is beginning to get a little bit worried. So he picks up the telephone and starts to talk to different people, trying to find out why on earth his cacti is shaking. Nothing. He has nothing on the telephone whatsoever, apart from a lot of music, whilst he's waiting for people to tell him nothing whatsoever. And I know I hate that on the telephone. But after an hour he gets through to a cacti man, and this man knows everything about cacti. And he wants to know everything about Dave's cacti. How tall it was, what color, what type of flower. He tells him everything. But the last thing he says is very peculiar. He says, listen very carefully because I shall say this only once. Are your family still in the house? To this, Dave says, yes, they are still there. The cacti man now shouted down the telephone, very loudly and very quickly. Get your family out of the house now! I'll be there in 15 minutes. So you can imagine at this point what Dave is thinking. He's thinking, oh my word, what can I do? What can I do? So he gets his family together. He goes outside and he's standing there for a while and he's thinking, 15 minutes is not a long time to wait at all. But 5 minutes later, he can see something in the distance coming his way. It's big and moving fast. He thinks, it's not for me. But then he has another look and sees that it's 2 police cars and 2 fire engines. And his heart starts to beat very quickly. They stop outside his house. The police car door opens up. The cacti man jumps out, runs up to Dave, says, "You're the man with the cacti!" Dave turns round and says, "Yeah, it's out the back." So the cacti man turns around and whistles loudly. The fire engine door opens up and one man jumps out. You have to imagine now that his boots go from his feet up to his waist. He has a big vest on, a mask on his face, a big tank on his back, leading down to his hand. You can see a flamethrower. And he walks through the garden very slowly. Gets up to the cacti, hits the cacti, and the whole thing starts to shake. And so for the next minutes, 20 minutes with the flamethrower. Now before, the cacti did look rather happy. Now it looks rather burnt, a bit like a dried slug. So you can imagine what Dave is thinking. $1,300 on one cacti. You come in like that and kill it. Why? The cacti man goes over to Dave, puts his hand on his shoulder and says, "You want to know why?" He takes Dave over to the cacti, pulls the cacti open, and inside it there are 150 tiger striped bird-eating tarantula. Now, each spider is one handspan big, and there were 150 spiders. The cacti man said to Dave that here between 1 hour and 1 day before there would be 150 spiders in the middle of his house saying, "Please feed me now." So, anybody here want to go to Mexico? Well, anyway, if you do go to Mexico, it is a lovely place, but my advice is, don't buy any cacti. Do any of you have any cacti at home? If you do, you check them. If they shake, you get out of there. And if you do see anything shaking at Eden, you come to find me. Because I know the quickest way out of here. Because I do not like spiders that big.
A long, long time ago, one of my ancestors, he was my great 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 grandfather, and he lived in America, and his name was Hawkeye the New. Now in those days there was no school. Yippee! But that meant there were no career advisors. The young men would go on a quest to find out what job they were meant to do. But before they did that, they would seek counsel with the old wise woman of the village. So one day, he plucked up courage and knocked on her door.
Come in, I've been expecting you. Oh, don't mind the smell. It's just the sage and the cedar and the lavender. Oh. Now, if I'm going to do a few things for you, you'll have to do a few things for me. First, take your clothes off. Oh. No, not now. When you get to the top of the mountain. And the other thing I want you to do is have no food or water for 4 days.
No food or water for 4 days? Well, he really wanted to find out what job he was meant to do for the rest of his life. So he climbed the mountain, and he took his clothes off, and then he made a magic circle just like the old woman had taught him. So he took a stone, and he stood before the east, and he called, and he asked for protection and guidance, and he put the stone down in the earth. And he did the same in the south, and the west, and the north. And in the centre of that magic circle, he made a fire. A fire to keep him warm and give him some company. Because he was standing on the top of a mountain with no clothes on. And it didn't matter they had no clothes on, because there was nobody watching. And as he stood there, waiting to find out what he was going to do, nothing happened. Not a thing. In fact, to be quite honest, he began to get a wee bit bored. Well, the sun went down, and the moon came up, and he was surrounded by wild animals. Notice I said animals, and this is where you get to join in. So boys and girls, mums and dads, as loud and as mad as you can on the count of 3. Wild howling. 1, 2, 3. And it was very scary. Oh, help, help, help. Oh, Mum? Dad? But there was nobody there. And he spent that whole night on his own in the dark, in fear. Well, as the sun rose on the second day, he felt a wee bit braver now that he could see what was around him. And he began to remember the words of the old wise woman.
When I was your age, son, which was a long, long time ago, I was told a lie. But I see the truth now, and I like you, so I'll share it with you. They said to me that we inherit the earth from our ancestors. No, 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 no. We borrow the earth from our children. We borrow the earth from our children. And the earth feeds us, and she clothes us, and she puts a roof over our head. Listen to Mother Nature. She'll help you find out what you're meant to do.
And as he remembered those words, he felt something move behind him. And as he turned, he could see a tree moving gently in the breeze. But he had forgotten the language of the trees. He looked higher for another omen, perhaps some birds. He saw a huge cloud coming towards him. It had the face of an animal. It was a shark cloud. Filled with water, and it came right down on top of him. Oh, I'm soaking wet. I'm freezing cold. Oh, I want Mum and Dad. I want to go home. And he spent that second night in self-pity. Well, as the sun rose on the third day, his third day without water, he was so thirsty and so weak. Water. Water. And he drifted off into a dream. You know, just like your mum and dad do. Oh, that was such a weird dream.
Aye! A right weird dream, eh? Because I was walking right in your dream. I wonder how I did that then, eh? Maybe it was magic. You getting thirsty? Well, here's a prezzy.
And she put this black, shiny seed into his hand, and as his fingers wrapped around it, it began to beat like a wee mouse's heart.
I wasn't just any seed. It's a magic seed. Whatever you wish for will grow with the tree. So, be careful what you choose.
Now that was a weird dream. But the weirdest thing is, it's still in my hand. How can that happen? How could something from a dream be in my hand when I'm awake? A magic seed. A magic seed. A magic seed. I've got a magic seed. Oh, I've got a magic seed. 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 I've got Now I know what I'm meant to do. So he came down from his mountain, having said thank you to the fire for its warmth and company, and thanking the north and the west and the south and the east for its protection and guidance. And he put his clothes back on, because there were people watching now. And then he called to the sun, and to the wind, and to the rain, and to the earth. Sacred Mother Earth, help this magic seed grow, so that I may tell stories from my soul that will touch people's spirits, and that I may hear their stories with a humble heart. And just as he was away to plant it, he spat in the ground. Not because he was rude, but he knew that that water would help that magic seed grow. That was after 3 days of not drinking anything. What a guy. Well, he planted that seed.